The Arctic is not just ice, silence, or endless landscapes. It is one of the most hostile and fragile places on the planet, where human life has always been an exception and where mistakes are not forgiven. Under temperatures capable of stopping the heart in minutes, there are real stories that don't appear in tourist brochures or optimistic documentaries about climate change. In regions like Svalbard, real events have occurred that are so extreme they seem like fiction, but they are not. What you are about to hear is not a top list. These are documented facts from official reports, from uncomfortable silences, and from truths that, for various reasons, were never fully told. These real stories will give you much to think about, especially tonight before you go to sleep. Svalbard is one of the few places on the planet where polar bears outnumber humans. In 2011, just over 2,500 people lived there, surrounded by an ecosystem that was already showing clear signs of collapse. Arctic sea ice was shrinking at an alarming rate, forcing polar bears to travel ever greater distances in search of food. That summer, a group of British students were on an educational expedition near the Vost Glacier, a remote area even by Arctic standards. Local authorities had warned of the presence of polar bears, but they were extremely thin. Animals that could no longer find seals due to the disappearance of stable ice. They were terribly malnourished. That night, the camp lacked adequate security. The bear arrived at dawn. It didn't attack like a raging predator, but like one exhausted and driven by hunger. Its white fur was stained with blood. Its silhouette was too narrow to be that of an adult male. The animal went straight for one of the tents. Inside, supposedly, was sleeping Horatio Chappell, a 17-year-old boy. When the tent zipper opened, there was no time to react, or so they said. The self-defense rifle, which is mandatory in Svalbard, misfired twice. Then 3 times. The shots wouldn't fire. The dry, cracking sound of the useless mechanism was etched into the survivors' testimonies. Or so they supposedly said. The bear in question was shot minutes later by others, but poor 17-year-old Horatio didn't survive. He suffered a gruesome death. The official report spoke of a tragedy caused by climate change, or perhaps by a hungry and desperate animal. And that's how that theory took hold for weeks, with the press focusing on the image of a starving bear, transformed into a symbol of an Arctic dying from climate change. But what never appeared in the reports was a conversation that took place months later among the survivors, among the companions of Horatio Chappell, the 17-year-old who died, during a private psychological evaluation in the UK. It turns out that 2 of those survivors, separately, described the same thing, and they did so with profound guilt and tears in their eyes. The day the bear that killed Horatio burst in, Horatio was pushed out of the tent by his own companions. It was a violent shove, swift, premeditated, and precise. The intention was to draw the hungry polar bear's attention so the others could escape. As I said before, these 2 survivors, Horatio's former companions, recounted everything with tears in their eyes and immense guilt. En Svalbard, the ice melts, yes, but the cold instinct for survival that drives some human decisions remains intact, whatever the era. And that's what killed poor Horatio. It wasn't a bear driven mad by climate change. It was his own terrified companions. Longyearbyen is one of the few places in the world where burying the dead is officially prohibited. Yes, since 1950, authorities discovered that the permafrost preserves bodies almost perfectly. Corpses buried decades ago remain intact there to this day. Some of those bodies still contain viable pathogens. In fact, corpses have been found there so perfectly preserved that they include remnants of the 1918 Spanish flu virus. That's why, when someone is seriously ill, they are urgently evacuated to the mainland to prevent them from dying there. As I said before, dying in Longer Bayon is illegal, but it can't always be avoided. It so happens that in this part of the world, corpses are even more illegal, and believe me, you'd never guess why. I gave you enough time to think about it. Now I'll tell you, corpses there are illegal because they don't rot, because they never decompose. In the winter of 1968, several kilometers from Longer Bayon, a small settlement of hunters began reporting strange symptoms. There weren't many inhabitants.